Go Who's and welcome to the 4-3-4 defense. My name is Deuce Prince. I'm a Charlottesville, Virginia native, lifelong UVA football fan, and former college offensive lineman. And I wanted to make this video today. It's not a recap or a preview of any Virginia opponents, but I wanted to do a deep dive on a couple of questions that I got from a TikTok I posted a couple weeks ago. And it's about this thing. So this is the call sheet that I use for college football 26 when I'm playing the game. And a couple questions. The first and most common one was, are you okay? And yes, I'm a little nerdy, but yes, I'm generally okay. Just very much nerdy. Number two, how do you make it? And that's another fairly simple one. Google Sheets, Excel, any spreadsheet application that you use will be able to produce something like this. It's typically not that hard if you're okay with basic Excel formatting, adjusting cell width, filling in colors on a cell. I have mine spaced out on the sheet so that it comes out nicely when I print it double-sided. So I actually have a double-sided version of it, but you can get as crazy or as basic as you want with the formatting. It's really not something that you have to feel like you have to have the actual genuine article that you might see on a NFL or college sideline. And the third most interesting question was, how do you actually fill it out? And I think that conversation I wanted to expand on. And it leads us to some interesting conversations of how football is actually called from a coaching perspective at the highest level. So first things first, how many plays are on a call sheet, or if you even have a call sheet to begin with, kind of exists on a bit of a bell curve based on your running and Sorry, Siri. Based on your running and passing distribution. A typical bell curve, like the highest isn't going to be in the middle, and then it kind of slopes down and evens out. The more run or more pass heavy your offense is, you're typically going to see smaller, if not no, distinguishable call sheet. The great way to think about this is like Mike Leach with his air raid attack at Texas Tech. A lot of those games were basically called on a 3x5 note card. You have certain personnel groupings that you might want to call in certain situations, certain alignments, 2x2, meaning 2 receivers on one side, 2 receivers on another, 3x1, 3 receivers on one side. They might want to dictate that and certain concepts. But in that offense, so many things happen after the ball is snapped, where receivers are running routes based on the coverage that they're receiving or that they're noticing in the defense and what the quarterback is observing about the defense. That all happens after the ball is snapped, that the play might be completely different based on what the defense is giving them. Similar on the other side of the spectrum. If you're super run heavy, you probably aren't going to have a Waffle House menu. You have certain plays that are good, bad versus a specific defensive front that you're facing, certain formations and personnel groupings that you want to emphasize in that game, but you aren't necessarily going to have it whittled down so much that you're going to have that big call sheet. Those big call sheets are typically seen in the middle of that spectrum where you're achieving some kind of run-pass balance, if not a little bit more over to the passing-heavy side. So that's where you'll see the huge ones, because often an offensive coordinator or head coach or wherever the play caller is with that call sheet is often setting up plays to either the next play or down the line in the future. And you can do that both ways. You can make a run play go to set up a passing play, or you can have a pass play to set up a run play. A great way to think of this is the West Coast offenses and how much they emphasize boot play action. They're often running wide zone plays. A play where the running back is reading gaps and it's going outside, typically towards the offensive tackle. Those can be made to look like run play, and then the same steps by the quarterback, but he pulls the ball away from the running back and just boots out to throw a play action pass. That's where you see a lot of these where you have very specific plays that you're trying to set up. You're having specific plays for specific situations because you're scheming your plays to get specific yardage. You have a play that we need 5 yards. This play will typically get us 6. We need 3. This will get us 4. And typically what you'll see is people choose a couple of different ways to go about this. Sometimes you're very big on the side of the field that you're on. You will see play sheets that are based on what hash the ball is on. Sometimes you will see what section of the field are you in. That's probably the most obvious case scenario, obvious thing that people would think of. You're obviously going to call different plays in the red zone versus when you're on the 40-yard line based on how many yards you have to go. You can't call a 40-yard vertical route on the 20-yard line going in. That just isn't going to happen. So there is a certain amount of that, but you will also see the vast majority be situational to the down and distance. And that's the strategy I went with for my play call sheet. So the bread and butter of mine is basically, your first down plays, which can kind of be agnostic. You just don't want to lose yardage. And then second down, second and long, second and medium, second and short. Short can be anywhere from inches to 3 to 4 yards. Medium can be defined as around 4 yards to about 8. And then long would be 8 and more. That's typically the distribution. For third down, it's the exact same thing. You have third and short, third and inches to third and 4, third and 4 to third and 8, third and 8 plus. So those often govern the type of plays that you're going to see. And one thing I did want to touch on is the general why. Why do we have this? Why is this even here? Why is it important? Wouldn't you want the coach to call plays kind of from the head based on the feel of the game? And not necessarily. One, you can fall into easy to predict patterns. Human psychology is a beautiful thing and it's very consistent. The plays that you run in the past are not guarantees of future returns. If you have a certain stick cover or stick passing play that you really like and it's working really well, you run that all through the first half and you just keep on calling that sucker, eventually the defense is going to adjust and all of a sudden you're going to have to mentally adjust instead of having a specific situation where that stick call is being used and it's being used intentionally and not being overused. The other part is you never want to get into a situation where you're calling plays with too much emotion. This is something that a lot of offensive coordinators and play callers do fall victim to. Say you get down by 10 early. Some coaches are going to be inclined to really push and really get away from what their team might actually be good at to try and narrow up the scoreboard rather than calling plays to get first downs. You'll see this a lot. Coaches will be calling a game off the scoreboard rather than what the defense is giving them, what their offense is good at, and what the situation actually calls for because the score is in their head, not the situation. The other thing is you want to eliminate dead time. And what I mean by dead time is whether your offense is up-tempo or slow as a snail, you want to have as little possible time between the previous play being whistled dead and getting to the line of scrimmage with a new play or getting the play called to the quarterback. You want to reduce that amount of time. Because even if you run a slower tempo offense where you're running the play clock down to 1 and giving every fan like me a heart attack thinking that we're going to get delay of game, that's often because they need to get the play call in because there are a lot of adjustments that need to be made based on what the defense is giving them. It could be as complicated as the quarterback he needs to look to the middle of the field and see if there's a safety in the middle of the field. That might change something. How many linebackers do we have up? Does anyone look like they're blitzing? You go to the offensive line. What's the defensive front? Are they in a 3-4? Are they in a 4-3? Are they in a 3-3-5 stack? Like, what are they giving us? The blocks are going to change because of that. The protections are going to change because of that. The wide receivers might be looking to see if the cornerbacks are playing inside of them or outside of them, because that will dictate how they run their route. And those are all things that have to happen at the same time. They have to be communicated to everyone on the field typically. The quarterback needs to typically understand what release the receiver's taking, what protection the offensive line wants to run, and needs to know if he needs to bring in a running back or keep a tight end in. And that's a complicated operation. The chatter on the line of scrimmage is a serious, serious thing and is critical. On the other side, if you run an up-tempo offense, you want to get to the line of scrimmage as fast as possible and hurry the defense. You want to make them feel uncomfortable. You want to make them feel like they're always rushing, they're always hurrying. The defense can't get guys on and off the field. They can't substitute. They're getting gassed. So you want to get that play call in really quickly. So that's why you'll often see, in college at least, the so-called Alvin and the Chipmunks. You know who I'm talking about. The guys in yellow, green, red, blue, purple, fuchsia shirts. If you're running spread up tempo, each one of those guys is communicating to a specific group of players. Say the guy in green is communicating to the offensive line, and he's doing this, and that's a trap play. And then the wide receivers guy is doing something crazy with his hands, communicates some crazy route concept. And that's typically a way to get the play call in really quickly. Now, if you're in a West Coast scheme that's super wordy, you're typically going to want everyone into the huddle really quickly so everyone can hear the 30-word play call, and you need to get everyone there together so everyone understands it. And that can't happen. That operation is not quick unless you have this. Because you don't want to be in the situation where the quarterback's like, "Coach, what are we running?" The head coach is telling you, the offense coordinator, like, "What are we doing?" And you're like, "Hang on. Let me think of the play. No, not that one. No. Now, like 7 seconds just died there. Maybe even more. And you have a 25-second play clock and you just killed 7 to 10, hemming and hawing. That is how a head coach loses their mind, and how a quarterback and an offense gets really frustrated. And the defense gets to substitute every hog molly up front that's really getting tired, and all of a sudden you got a new fresh 4 in there ready to run at the passer and kill him. So you need this, because the play happens. There's an inevitable 2 to 3 second period where the guys are getting off the ground, the referee is putting the ball back on the spot, guys are getting kind of back over, and in that period of time, you really do want to be able to just look down at that sheet, know the play call you want next, because you have, say, 5 to 10 for that specific situation that you know immediately we're going to. And that ensures a quick operation. The distribution tends to also follow a bell curve of most common situations. You need a lot of second and medium plays, because you're going to encounter a lot of second and mediums. Second and long might not be as common. Second and short might not be as common. Second and medium is pretty darn common. Second and 8 is probably one of the most common plays outside of first and 10. Third and short tends to be a pretty common scenario. If you think the average football play is going to get about 3 to 4 yards of play, and so you go from first and 10, second and 7, third and 4, third and 3. So there is a distribution of most likely scenarios that does make an offense have more of those plays in reserve if you're calling situationally. Sometimes, like I said earlier, people are calling on the hash. Sometimes you have specific plays that are in for a personnel group. If you don't know what that means, you'll often hear 22 personnel or 12 personnel or 10 personnel. Just remember that that number signifies how many running backs and how many tight ends are on the field. So if you hear 21 personnel, 2 running backs, 1 tight end. 12 personnel, 1 running back, 2 tight ends. You can get all sorts of funky personnel groupings in there, but that's essentially how you get there, and you have plays for that specific grouping in, because maybe you don't want to run everyone pack it in tight, we're going to run dive with 10 personnel where you have running back, no tight ends, and 4 wide receivers. You might want to have specific plays dialed up for when you have specific people on the field. You're going to want to run deep passing concepts when you got your fast dudes on the field. You're in the red zone, you might want some dudes that are able to go up and get the ball and be physical and kind of box people out. That goes into it. It's very boutique in nature to how you want to play the game. Are you an X's and O's guy? Are you a Jimmy's and Joe's guy? If you're an X's and O's guy, you might just go situational and say, all right, we're just going to run these plays. We're just going to get in this situation because we need to gain this amount of yards. Some coaches scheme it up so that, hey, we need 5 yards. Let's find a way to get our best athletes on the field and let's get those yards. And we have plays for those guys. And those are good ways to call games because you want to do it with intentionality. Another good thing to think about is the offensive staff is preparing the whole week for this game. And granted, you need to make some on-the-fly adjustments, but you don't want to shoot from the hip. You've been practicing, preparing, running specific plays. If you don't have a plan going into a game and you just start rushing and chucking up deep pass to try and score a 21-point touchdown, that's a great way to get bogged down in a game. You want to trust the work you did on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday on Saturday. You want to trust that preparation beforehand because you're in a lower cortisol environment when you're in the meeting room and you're talking and watching film and you're able to pull up resources. You can find out how many yards you average on a given play. You can't really do that on the sideline. And so if you're just calling a game based off of vibes, if you're only calling it off of vibes, that can be a very disastrous offensive strategy. Now, I will say this. Any coach worth their salt knows when to adjust and knows when to deviate from that plan. There are some situations where that does happen, and there are situations where it needs to happen. However, you know that because you can see the results from calling a calm, controlled, intentional game. So you can make intentional adjustments rather than just having one play go bad and say, all right, we're never touching that concept again. It's just not going to work. Who knows? That play that goes -5 all the time in football goes for 50 later on in the game. It just happens. And, I would encourage anyone who wants to build this to be okay with this not being perfect. Because obviously we're playing video games. We're not actually calling Power 5 football games. And granted, most people have school, have a day job, have a 9 to 5, and you're playing it just to enjoy it. So make sure there are fun plays on this. Don't take it too seriously. For example, I have a whole section called Gadget. Gadget's just all the trick plays, reverses, flea flickers that you want. You just have that on there. I have a section I call Daggers. Daggers is for me for when you're in the 20-yard line going into about the 30 and you want to run a play that really just drives home a potential win. The best theoretical situation would be, you're up by 7 with 7 minutes in the fourth quarter. or 2 minutes in the third, and you want to make a one-score lead a two-score game, and you call up a play and you're able to hit a big play to score a touchdown and extend that lead, that's a pretty damn good feeling. That's a really good way to kind of see a game, and you have to kind of sense what that feeling is and where the opportunity is. And some people were also asking if I grade the plays for the situation so they pop up. And I'm just going to be honest, I put so much effort into this that I really just want the plays in there. I can find them when I need them. If you want to build this and grade the plays situationally to match it, more power to you. But for me, it's just too much time sitting in front of the console, not playing and just kind of adjusting star ratings. I don't lose that much time because literally the moment that play ends in the game, my hands go off the controller, I pick this up, or I have it resting underneath, and I can find the play that I need, and I immediately know what play that is, and I can go for it. And that is typically how it actually works. You know, the play ends, pull the sheet out, the coaches will have the headset microphone thing to click the on button. You click the on button, you tell the play to the quarterback, and then the play goes in. That time frame is not all that different. And I think this is a great tool if you want to understand football a little bit better, because that will illuminate your perspective on a lot of different things. And it doesn't matter how much football you've watched in your life or how much football you've played. It's always an illuminating experience because you might realize there are levels to this if you're a new football fan, and understand the complexity that goes into it, and you know that most of these coaches are not as dumb as Twitter thinks they are. If you've watched a lot of ball, it might refine the type of football you genuinely like seeing played. You know, you might have ran an offense in high school or college or even the pros, and it's kind of been all you know. A great way to learn new parts of football is to have to mentally go through this exercise and find ways to win with a certain offense. It's illuminated my perspective on the Tennessee offense, because I built one of these for Tennessee. I built one for the Go-Go last year, and it was very illuminating, and I didn't understand what those offenses were trying to do. And just by sheer virtue of looking at the plays and living with it and kind of chewing on it for a minute, you kind of realize, oh, so this is what they're trying to do. This makes sense now. It will illuminate your perspective. You don't necessarily have to just base it off of what you ran, because once you branch out and you just start doing it for fun, oh my goodness. Like, you start having a lot of fun, and you start appreciating what other people are doing and understanding the complexities and the, frankly, fun offenses that there are out in the college football world. And I will have a link to this sheet so you can grab a copy in the description. I have a ton of fun with this thing. I have a couple of drafts there too if you want to take a look at that. I have a couple different versions of formatting. The first tab is really in my opinion, my favorite version. It's kind of a pro-style-y playbook. My dad coached at UVA in the 2000s in the NFL. I'm going to run a generally pro-ish style offense, but, you know, grab it, do it. This is a utility that I think more people in the college football world should use, or at least the college football 26 world should use, because it elevates my gameplay all the time, because I hate just running the cheese plays in the game. I just hate running those plays over and over again. There is some joy in the restriction of, I have these 10 plays which I can call on second and medium, and I can't just run wildcat jet reverse pass every single time, because it's gonna hit. There are cheese plays in the game, and you actually feel a lot better about how you won a game if you actually look at how you went in and you strategize for the game, and the plays that are in your base offense are what you're actually using rather than the cheese plays. This has been a complete diversion from our typical UVA football programming, but I just love this thing so much. If you have any questions, drop them down in the comments. I'd love to answer them. Obviously, anything else football related or Virginia football related, drop them in here. I love talking about this kind of stuff. I love offensive football. It's my favorite thing in the world. I love talking football, especially on the offense or offensive line side of the game. So I appreciate all you watching. Please like, share, subscribe. Thank you so much for your time, and go Hoos.